So just wanted to make a quick video. It's actually going to be a little bit of a micro series on kind of leveling through the story campaign. I've got a lot of, fellow guild members who are asking, they want to get better at going through the campaign, especially on second or third characters, or even during a league start. There's a lot of tips and tricks that I'll do a video on later about how to get through the campaign, signaling, different ways and icons and things in each zone that kind of gives you a direction. For example, in Ledge, there's 3 stones that tell you which direction to go if you come back to the portal, and that allows you to kind of do some hop around. Which waypoints to skip, which side quests you can skip versus really kind of doing. Those things will be in the next video, but what I wanted to kind of cover in this video is kind of the twinking gear, and basically high powered gear that level 1 characters can wear. Most people are familiar with the Tabula Rasa, and basically it's a 6 socket white link, or 6 socket 6 linked white socket chest, so you can put any combination of jewels in here. Gold Rim gives you a lot of just resist all. The range you can see is 30 to 40. And then kind of our first other kind of unique is the 7 League Step Rahu Boots. Gives you 50 increased movement speed. Combine that with just even a level 4 40% increase, and you get 90% increased move speed. Makes going through the story super fast, because you're really just jutting around at full max move speed. And then we'll talk about a couple items that make you even go faster. We'll skip this for now and talk about that later. From our belts, I wanted to cover a couple belts that are kind of good. Minigord's girdle is a pretty good belt, just at level 8 to toss on. There's only a handful of like low level belts, and this is kind of the first entry. It gives you a good amount of strength, flat physical damage to attacks, live, cold, a little bit of life recovery, but it's just really just kind of throwing something on there to get you going. Belted Deceiver is one that can carry you for a bit. Gives you 10 to all, so now you're looking at 40 to 50 all resist. And it kind of keeps you from taking big hits from crit strikes, but I usually swap this out pretty quickly. One I usually is Parandus' Blazon Cloth Belt. Reason like this one is you get all attributes, which early on in the game, as you're just starting through trees and you're trying to get gear equipped and you're just trying to level gems and stuff, not having to worry about your attributes early game, just kind of lets you just keep on blitzing and click leveling up on skill gems without having to really micromanage that. You also get 20% increased flask duration, which really helps with your Quicksilver flask on keeping them up as you're running through. Once you get to 25, if you need some massive damage boost, Prism Weave is just a ton of damage. I mean, you're looking somewhere from the low end of 20ish, and then the high ends up to 20, 50 plus 60, 110 lightning damage and cold fire. Really, really strong. And then they kind of can tie into another item we'll talk about here in a minute. So those are generally the belts I kind of just toss through. Like I say, I usually pick a Parandus and just keep on trucking, and don't look back. But I've been known to throw a Prisweave on, especially if I'm doing an attack build. Obviously, if you're doing a spell, not that helpful. Now, there is a replica Prism Weave that you can use that will basically do the same thing, but for spells. So that's kind of useful as well. But really, like I say, if you're doing attacks, throw this guy on, and you've just picked up an extra 100 flat DPS, basically, with your build. Now, and it doesn't matter if you're converting or not, because these are just going to stack on top of everything. For amulets, kind of two that start off. Actually, let's go back. Since we're on belts, the other belt I'll use, especially if I'm doing this hollow palm technique option, and is Darkness Enthroned, Stygian, and with as much increased effect. You can see it goes from 50 to 100%. This character I'm actually sitting on right now has one that's 97%. Now these get pretty expensive as you kind of cross that 97, 98, 99s, and the hundreds. Start to get quite expensive. But the goal here with this belt is it's a level 1 belt, and it basically, potentially doubles the jewels you put in. And what you'll do is you'll grab tier 1, or level 1, I should say, level 1, either with a stat or some damage or life, whatever you want to, that really is going to help your build out. Attack damage with swords or wands or axes, whatever you're running. Since I'm doing this kind of dex stacking hollow palm, I've done 2 T1 dexterities here, so this is 32 dex, and then that basically gets doubled in this belt to come out to be, almost 60-ish dexterity off those 2 jewels in the belt, which is a lot of damage with the hollow palm. But if you're not running hollow palm, which means you're not stat stacking, or if you're not running some other kind of stat stacking, then Prisweave is probably the way to go. This is just exceptionally helpful because you can socket these jewels in and start with level 1 with 32 or 60 some extra dex till you can get to this belt. So for amulets, you have the Replica Kurui's Ward. Gives you dex and accuracy, which usually a lot of builds struggle with early. And the Replica one gives you increased area effect and area damage for all those guys and girls that want to run Slammers as their second or third character to try it out because it looks really cool and has great MTXs. Definitely pick one of these up. They're not very expensive, especially this part of the league, but at the beginning, of course, because they only really drop from Heist and a few other possible random kind of options with cards and stuff. Could be a little hard earlier in a league start, but by week 2 or 3, which is usually when most people want to start re-rolling an alt, they're pretty cheap. Or you can just go for standard Kurui Ward, which by the time you get through story mode, you'll probably have dropped 3 of these, or at least by the time you get halfway through mapping. These are great if you have any kind of bow build, or if you're going to use Mana Bond for leveling. These are, or not Mana Bond, Mana Forged Arrows, my bad. Forgive me. Mana Forged Arrows are great with this because you get a ton of speed, you get a lot of additional movement speed, projectile damage, and that's the other nice thing with this. The 10% move speed plus the 50 plus your 40 on your flask literally gives you 100% move speed. Super, super helpful. Now, one kind of unique combination is if you take Natural Hierarchy's Rot Feather and combine it with a Prism Weave, you can get some really insane damage boosts because you're basically taking all of these, that 100 and some damage, 130 some damage, and getting another 25% out of that. So you're getting another 25 flat damage out of that as well. Plus you're increasing most of the time. Well, this one's corrupted with increased damage, which might be the base one. Well, they always come corrupted. That's right, because it's a talisman. So yeah, you also get the 33% increase, which multiplies on top of all that. So really you're getting, in essence, 50% increased damage. So basically doubling the damage out of your Prisweave. So this plus this is actually a lot of damage if you don't have damage, but you want to practice running the skill that you're going to use in the end game. Carnage Heart's a good option if you really just kind of need some kind of leech recovery. You get a lot of extra damage, some attributes, more elemental resist, which will kind of help just cap your resist throughout. Just kind of covering some oddball ones depending on what you're doing. This one, if you're doing a strike skill, you can actually, like a smite or something, you can actually get a lot, or if you're doing like a cyclone or something, needs strike range to be effective. You can get a lot of AoE out of this. Really not that great though. Rather have like a Carnage, a Rot, or ideally an Astramentus, depending on where you're going for. But people sleep on this one and really don't understand how much of an AoE that increases. So especially as you're trying to deal with slam skills and things. This one's kind of a bit of a sleeper. Plus, you also get some cold and fire, which will keep you capped all the way through, and more move speed. Because again, we just want to get through as fast as we can, and we're going to be on full life for almost the entirety of our mapping and stuff. Because we're going to be one-shotting everything, so we're going to pretty much always be on full life. So now we're up to 110 move speed on just running around. So it's a bit of a sleeper for level 16. For level 1, you have Akuri Tiki, Coral Amulet. Really here, you're just kind of the elusive on reaching low life and phasing. So the advantage here is we all get to deal with, Act 1, Section 2 mud flats with the Roas. And by having elusive and phasing, really kind of helps a ton on not getting stun locked by those. Or getting kind of pinned in the caverns, the first section of the caverns, where it's a tight corridor and there's 32, blue beetles all shooting at you, those types of things. You just end up taking a low life hit instead of kind of getting stuck and dying. You just phase right and keep on running. So for level 1, this amulet's kind of another hidden gem because of the phasing when you do kind of get those stun locks that happen. Then, of course, Astromendus, especially if you're going to be doing any kind of stat stacker that's stacking damage. Again, I like to run one with nothing hollow palm techniques. It's a common one. You'll find that most of the max rolls will use this. And basically what this jewel, we'll go ahead and talk about it since I've mentioned it several times. You count as dual wielding when you're encumbered or unencumbered. Unencumbered means nothing in either weapon slots or gloves. But you get 40% more attack speed with melee, and you get 14 to 20 attack damage per 10 dexterity. And so by level 20, you'll probably have, if you've paved your tree correctly and you've hit, dexterity nodes and a few other things, you'll have 100 here. You'll picked up a whole bunch, especially if you're on the right side of the tree. This is just awesome. If you're in the top left, there's probably some better options. I'd say Mana Forged Arrows is probably a better kind of way to run if you're in the top left. But if you're bottom left, bottom right, or just kind of on the right side, even top right. So basically, anything but the top left of the tree where there's just no dex, there's not a good way to path the dex, then this is an awesome ability because you really by level 20 have 150 flat physical damage with no supports or anything, and then you take that to the newly buffed damage ratios that melee skills were given, and you just end up with a massive amount of insane damage. And usually most of those skills, people commonly run Smite. Another one that I've just recently found is awesome is a bit pricey, but Volcanic Fissure of Snaking, because you basically hit your attack button one time and it snakes out and destroys the entire screen for you while you just keep running by mobs. So definitely something to look at. When it comes to rings, quite a few options here depending on what you need. Obviously, about the only low level 1 ring that you can get is a black heart, but that still gives you a lot of damage. And you also get to regenerate some life. You can stack 2 of these. That gives you a bunch of chaos damage as well, which nothing in like the first 4 or 5 acts really has any chaos damage. So that's just pure straight unmitigated damage. And the 10% chance to cause monsters to flee can actually be useful. Not so much that it actually causes them to flee, they run away and all that fun stuff, but it will stop their attacks when they start to flee. It can help sometimes if you get into those stun locks early on when your life's not low and you're taking bigger hits, especially from Roas. The willing cart guys, zombie or skeletons and those things. Or a bow character or something that's got a bunch of AoE that's just hitting fast. Those things that flee can help out a little bit, but you don't want to stick on it long because by the time you get around 20, and so around 20, 24, you're 30, you have a whole bunch better set of rings. So you have Lahoop of all iron. This thing in times two is just amazing. You end up with, I mean, all the attributes you could want. Probably about another 80% increased damage. You get, let's see, I think it's, yeah, 10 to 30. So if you run two with perfect rolls on 30, that's 60 elemental resist. Two of these plus a gold rim, and you're pretty much able to run the entire story at max, or well, with purity of elements, at max elemental resist, even into like white maps. Next up, we have a Call of the Void. Requires level 16. Um, this one is really nice, especially once you get Purity Elements, which you get right around this point. I think it's level 16 or 18, might be 24 that you get Purity Elements, but I think you get it right around level 16. I'll have to go check. But um, all damage with hits can chill, and all damage taken, meaning if you get hit, can potentially chill you. Enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered though frozen. So basically, what that means is there's no corpses, so you don't have to worry about corpse explosion, porcupines, or anything like that as you're going through. Worst case scenario, if you have one of these for that garden path before you kill in Act 8, right after the bathhouse, we have all died a million times to the porcupines. Just tossing this ring makes that whole zone null and void. You smash something, porcupines all just disappear. So it's good also if you're running a build that's doing any kind of cold damage, because everything's going to basically just shatter. Or if you run Herald of Ice, everything on the screen shatters, which just makes clearing really clean and easy for you. Praxis, some builds struggle with, you're low level, you're running one, maybe two, depending on how things go. Auras, you're trying to fit in maybe determination and purity or something, or a haste. Praxis gives you the ability to, stack, especially when you have a free 6-link level 1 and a tabula. It can be really expensive and you keep running out of mana. 2 Praxis can basically void off your early game mana costs. And anytime you get hit, you'll gain mana back. So even if you do run out in a boss fight or something, or you're just swarmed and smacked, as soon as something hits you, you'll get all of your mana back, basically. Lastly, we have Death Rush. So Death Rush is awesome because it gives you adrenaline. Adrenaline gives you 100% increased attack damage, or increased damage just in general. 25 increased attack, cast, and movement speed. So again, we're getting up to 100, depending on our combinations, 135 move speed now. And 10% reduced physical damage, or it's physical damage reduction. So now you'll see that gain adrenaline for 3 seconds on kill has an option between 1 and 3 seconds. It's about a 30 chaos difference week 3 of this league so far on these, to go between a 1 and a 3. But you really do want to try and get a 3. And the reason for that is, what you want is, as you hit a pack of monsters, they explode, you get the 25% move speed, and you catch the next pack. Over those 3 seconds, smack them one time, refresh that buff just as it's falling off, and keep on moving. That way you keep that 25% extra move speed and that extra attack damage and cast. Now, you can run 2 Death Rushes, and if you do, it doesn't duplicate the adrenaline, but it does extend the duration. So the adrenaline for 3 seconds, if you had 2 with 3 seconds, you gain the adrenaline for 6 seconds. So if you do that, you can basically keep it up permanently through any section of storyline. So there's some value to that. What I usually like to do personally is just run a Lahoop with really good elemental resists and a Death Rush, and then swap to Call of the Void if I know I'm going to go into a zone. So the gardens, sometimes the docks, the bathhouse area, past bathhouse, anywhere there's going to be porcupines, I'll throw Call in the Void on, just so I don't ever run into the fact of, oh good, I've hit that pack and now I get to, and it completely exploded on me, and now I have to go back and run through the entire zone again, with no monsters, which means no adrenaline and running super slow. So, but then once that's done, I'll throw this back on with Purity of Elements, Lehoop, Death Rush, a Gold Rim, and then the Perandus, actually the Belted Deceiver for its 10. Then you're pretty much, or even Prisweave. You're pretty much looking at Elemental Cap all the way through story, and like I said, depending on a few items and how you pick up what's your shield, maybe weapon, your glove option if you pick up a glove, if you're not doing the hollow palm technique, those types of things will have you basically able to do white maps for quite a while and get your levels just hammered through, because there's a weird spot for a lot of builds where they're in game, especially with the new items that were added, as far as the new tier of items, where you're looking at a level 67, level 70 is when you finish story, or where story experience just falls off and you have to start mapping. But all your really good gear is level 84, so you've got to figure out how you're going to get 14 levels. Super easy to do, just running T5 maps, or even T7, T10, depending on what you're going with to get that. But you don't want to have to like try and swap around, resist, all that kind of stuff. So what I'll usually do is just drop the Death Rush, grab the other Lehoop, and just take off going. That's usually what I find. Get my 80 level, 14 levels, get to 84, and then shift over to my actual build that I want to play, where usually I already have the armor waiting, or I've got the gold, or should say chaos and divine and stuff waiting to buy what I want for the build to get it, just to keep on developing or actually shift into that build, because that weird mid-level zone used to not be bad, because most of the gear was like level 75, 76, 78 at a stretch, because that was the high end level, even for item level 85, 86. But with the new 2 levels or 2 tiers above existing that now force level 84 character level 84 to wear, things are becoming a lot harder to it's becoming a lot more to kind of transition into that. So yeah, just be mindful of that and go from there. So that's kind of a high level. In the next video, I'm going to talk about a couple options of different ways to level and what that looks like. And we'll kind of go from there. That'll probably be a much shorter video than this one. Less things to cover, just kind of 2 or 3 options, depending on where you're at with the trees and stuff like that. So appreciate, please like and subscribe. And as always, have fun.